Look, I know it always seems like a good idea at the time, but seriously, you can never trust a dragon. Welcome to the depths. Hello, welcome back to Readings from the Depths. My name is Lecton. Thank you for spending some time with me. Today, I have a review for you. I'm very excited to review King Sorrow, the new book by Joe Hill. This is being published 21st October, and I did receive a complimentary copy in exchange for an honest review, but I have to say I've already bought my own version, a hardcover copy, because I want to have it on my shelf. I want to be able to reread it. I want to be able to share it with friends because I loved this book. So, this is a big book. It's about 900 pages, give or take, and I could go on and on. Anyone that's watched my reviews before knows that I have no problem talking at length. I'm going to do my best not to do that. So, you'll know the running time of this when you clicked on it. So you'll see how successful I was. Now, the plot of this is actually really simple. The plot is you have a group of 6 friends, and one of those friends, the first one we meet, his name is Arthur. He, runs afoul of some bad people, and he's trying to figure out a way to get out of this kind of pickle he's put himself in. That's putting it lightly. And his friends and he work together to figure out a way to get him out of this mess. And, one night they may or may not be a little bit intoxicated, and they manage to summon a dragon. Now, they didn't really think it was going to work, but it did. And now they have this dragon. But the thing is, dragons are tricksy. So they think the dragon can help them get out of this situation. But what really happens is the dragon says, hey, look, you've summoned me. I'm coming back every year. So every year for the rest of your lives, you have to give me a name of a sacrifice for someone that I can have. And if you don't, I'll just kill one of you. So all of a sudden, their whole lives have been mapped out in a way that they weren't ready for. And the book is an exploration of what that means and how they can go about their lives in that way. Now look, this is being categorized a little bit as a horror. It's not really a horror. It's more of a dark fantasy with thriller vibes, But what's really beautiful about it is that it has a whole bunch of different subgenres mashed together. But before I get to that, what I loved most about this story is the characters and how deep the characters go and how much time you want to spend with all of the characters. There are 6 characters as our main cast and maybe 2 ancillary characters that come over and over again that are kind of repeat ancillary characters. And all of them are so wonderfully complicated and diverse and robust and full, and you want to spend time with all of them. And what's great is if you look at those characters, we have a diversity of races, of ages, of ethnicities, of sexualities, of economic status, and yet it never feels like Joe Hill is just ticking off boxes. These characters fit together. You can understand why they're friends. You can understand how all of their jagged and broken pieces rub up against one another to become smooth. Everything about them makes sense. As a group, they make sense. How they work makes sense. So it's really wonderful to see these characters. Our main character is this black nerd named Arthur. He's the one we meet first. He's our first POV character. And in many ways, he is the heart of this story. But also, you find out right from the very first chapter, right when you meet him, is that his mother, who is an Episcopalian minister, is also in jail, and he's going to visit her. So he is the heart of our story. Then you have, one of his friends and his roommate, who is a twin, and the 2 twins, they were fraternal twins, a brother and sister, they're from Texas, and they are wildly different. They're like yin and yang, right? Or like water and oil. They have different political ideas, they have different ways of existing in the world, and yet they work perfectly together. So as a pair, they are something more than the sum of their parts, and they fit into this quartet, this group, in such a meaningful way that they are exciting to be part of. Now, they're from Texas, he's from New England. This all takes place in Maine, right? Very Stephen King location. So Joe Hill is building off of his father's work. And in fairness, this is certified as part of the Castle Rock universe. In one of the early chapters, they mention characters from the Dead Zone. They actually spoil the Dead Zone a little bit. If you don't, maybe if you don't know the Dead Zone before going into this, you won't realize it. But they mention a politician, and they mention an event that happens with the politician, and that is some of the culminating events of the book, The Dead Zone, of Stephen King's book, The Dead Zone. So most of the story takes place in Maine, but we have these characters from Texas, and then we have this rich, wealthy orphan who lives with his uncle. He is another part of their friend group, and his uncle used to work for the CIA doing, MK Ultra type things. That's how they have this occult knowledge in the first place, how they're able to summon a dragon. Another one of the main characters is like a do-gooder. She just wants everyone, she's a people pleaser. She wants everyone to always like her. So not only is she really smart, not only does she work really hard, but she also plays piano, and she does all of these extracurricular things. And like her purpose in life is to make sure people are happy with her, right? So part of that is repressing who she thinks she really wants to be in order to mold herself into fitting others' needs. She is also an integral part of our group. And then the last member of our core group is a young woman named Gwen, who is actually in high school when the rest of our characters are in college. And her mother works for Colin's uncle. So Colin is the wealthy one, and they all, hang out at his uncle's house. And that's how they meet Gwen. Gwen's mother is the maid at the house. And yet she still fits into this group. She isn't ever an outsider. She's a townie in this college town, right? So in that way, she's an outsider, but she isn't treated that way. She's an integral part of our group. And really, I said that Arthur was the heart of the story, and he is in many ways, but she is the foundation of the story. And I'll get to why in a moment when you look at the plotting and the writing. But so these 6 characters are wildly different, and yet they fit together as a group, and they all feel complicated, they feel real, and as they grow across the length of the novel, they all change. They all go on these immense journeys due to the events of having to deal with the dragon, but then having to deal with everything else in their lives. And none of it feels forced, right? So I think the character work is what's most important, and the characters' journeys are these complicated inner journeys, and they're navigating all these heavy themes, but they all do it with a deep foundation of friendship, and how that friendship may be tested, it may be twisted, it may be used by some, or it may be a buffer that some hide behind so they don't ever realize their true selves. But that friendship and how these 6 young people relate to each other over the course of a few decades is the heart of this story, and all of the fantastical elements are there to serve this group and their inner journeys. So the characters are top notch, and by the end of the story, you don't like all of them, right? Some of them go one way and another. You don't really like all of them, but you want to spend time with them because they're interesting, they're engaging, and they feel real. Like none of them feel like this literary archetype that is just filling in space. And that includes a few of the other ancillary characters. There's one ancillary character, a trans woman, who comes in, who plays a much kind of outsized role to the story from when you first meet her, but then she returns later on. And I think she is also an incredible addition to the cast, and just fell in love with her. So all of these characters are really, really great, and Hill does a great job of having a diverse cast, but it never feels like he is forcing it. It feels very natural, and they work together in such a way that you're always entertained. Now, building off of the characters, I think the writing and the plotting is really smart, especially because this is a 900-page book. It never feels like that. As soon as I picked it up, I didn't want to put it down. And everything is so fast-paced, right, that you're always turning the page and just you can't wait to keep going. And part of that is because the way he plotted it out is that it is broken up into 5 major sections, or 5 books they're actually called, and they take place across different decades. So the story starts in 1989, and then in book 2 we jump to I think maybe 91, and then in book 3 we're in like 96, and we go all the way to 2022. So every book jumps anywhere from 2 to 10 years depending on where you are in the story. And every book is told from a different character's perspective. For the most part, there's a little bit of overlap. So because of that, we have these different versions of the story. We're not stuck in one character's perspective the whole time. We get to see the world and their experiences through every member of this friend group. So that means we get to see every character from different perspectives, which is really wonderful. Our main cast, when the 5 of them are all in college, and then Gwen is the high schooler. So she's the youngest one of them. But I mentioned she is like the foundation of the story, and that's because even though there are, like I said, 5 sections or 5 books which focus on a different character or have a different character's perspective in each book, each of those books then has an interlude, quote unquote, and the interlude is always from Gwen's point of view. So the first book is from Arthur's point of view, and then the interlude is from Gwen. Then the second book is from a different character's point of view, and it has an interlude from Gwen. And now these interludes, normally when you have a long book and you have interludes between chapters, the interlude may be 2 or 3 pages, right? That's not the case here. The interludes themselves have 15 subchapters within them because the chapters are short. Some of the chapters are maybe only a page or 2 pages, but they're short, they're really fast paced, and they move really quickly. The writing itself, it manages to be epic, right? It spans a few decades and it goes into the fantastical, and yet it is also very intimate because it is so focused on character that you care about all these characters, including and especially when the story around them gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? They get smaller and tighter and more intentional. So by breaking the story into these 5 books, it's almost like 5 independent books, right? And it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel disjointed. They all flow into one another very, very seamlessly. And when you jump a span of years, there's always a little bit of dialogue to tell you what's happened in those years that you missed. So it isn't the case that it feels very disjointed or blocky, but because there are these 5 different books that come from 5 different perspectives, and each of those books have a slightly different subgenre feel. So the first one is this fantastical story that is where they meet the dragon. It also has a very thriller vibe. There's some crime elements mixed in. Then there's another one that I don't want to give too much of it away. Even Joe Hill did give some of it away in interviews I've seen him do. I don't even want to give that much away. But the second section is wildly thrilling and edge of your seat, white knuckling your whole way through it. Then there's one section where there are government agents who may or may not be following some of the characters. So you get this espionage feel to it. So these 5 different major sections of the novel have different feelings to them. So you don't ever feel stale in the writing. The writing is always propulsive, always moving forward, but you're looking at the characters from all these different perspectives, and then the subgenre that it's playing with is in of itself, always changing in such a way to keep you entertained, to keep your attention always moving forward. What I really like about the story too is that there are so many unexpected things that happen. There are twists and turns that I didn't see coming. Now, some of the things that happen you do see coming, right? Because what you're really looking at is these 6 characters as they grow and as they change. What does it mean to have the kind of power that they have? Right? The control of a dragon who you don't ever really have any control over, but you have some sort of ability to direct him in one direction or another. In the same way that, a weapon of mass destruction is going to always have collateral damage. Dragons are somewhat similar. So you can point it in a direction and hope that it does what you want, but you never really know what's going to happen. Some of our characters seek out that power. They love it. They think they can, either monetize it or at least use it for, ultimately good ends. And others are afraid of it. They don't want that kind of power. So because of that, and the way they relate to this power that they don't want, but they have to have, that is thrust upon them, their lives change, right? And each of them changes differently. So you see throughout the story these responses to trauma, to resilience, ideas of responsibility, right? How power changes people, and how power and vengeance and retribution sometimes come at the cost of humanity, and how different characters manage that differently. Now, the story is filled with these action set pieces. Every one of these 5 sections has at least one action set piece, and some of them are incredibly elaborate and really fun. Like, the book is fun at its heart. In some ways, I almost want to say it's like a popcorn movie where you just are glued to the screen the whole time. But I don't want to say that and undercut how emotionally resonant this story is and how kind of profound it is. This story really is looking at friendship and the power of friendship, but it's also looking at legacy. Right? It's looking at the question of what are the parts of us that will outlive us, and how can we nurture those parts of us? And you see these different characters trying to find different answers to that question and to go about realizing it in different ways. And some of those characters' journeys, you can kind of see them coming. They are telescoped from the beginning, and others' journeys take wild left turns that you didn't see at all. And so there was always surprise in this story. Like I said, there are many unexpected parts, and yet it was always heartfelt. There was never any facade. Nothing ever felt performative in any way. It always felt genuine and it felt real. And so I'm not sure if I have anything else to say about this except that I loved it. I thought it was great. I read the whole thing in I think maybe 3 days, even though it is 900 pages. I didn't want to put it down. It has a few wonderful Easter eggs to Stephen King's work. Like I mentioned, it does spoil the Dead Zone a little bit. It also has a really, really beautiful reference to The Dark Tower, or rather to The Gunslinger, which is the first book of The Dark Tower. And it isn't a direct reference, but if you've read The Gunslinger and you know the story of The Gunslinger and you know Stephen King, like the first line of The Gunslinger and how important that was to Stephen King and to launching the whole Dark Tower series, that line has these echoes in a very important scene in the first chapter, or in the first book rather. And you just see Hill taking all of the best parts of Stephen King's writing and putting them together in this. And I imagine that Hill doesn't like being compared to his father. I also imagine it's inevitable. And I will say that I've read other books by Hill before. I've read Horns, I've read Nosferatu, I've read Heart-Shaped Box, right? I think it's called. And I've enjoyed all of those. I wasn't blown away by any of them. I think Nosferatu was up there for me, but none of them blew me away. Yet I still really enjoyed them. And yet this one blew me away. I didn't want to put it down. And I think it takes all of the best parts of Stephen King's writing. His ability to really create a sense of place, small town, folksy, almost whimsical sense of atmosphere and location, and then populate it with really intentional characters and create character journeys that take priority over the narrative. Yet in this case, he also has a wonderful narrative journey as well. The narrative makes sense, it's satisfying, it's fulfilling. The ending, when you get to it, is also very narratively satisfying, as well as satisfying on a character level. And, the twists and the turns it takes, some of them are heartbreaking, some of them are really exciting, and they get you pumped up. Everything about this is a lot of fun, and I had a great time. So I think that's all I have to say about it. I really hope you get a chance to read this, and if you do, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, as well as any other book by Joe Hill that you've read. So please share all of those, any other comments, ideas, criticisms down below in the comments. For now, I'll say thank you for spending some time with me today. I appreciate you. please be kind to yourselves, take care of each other, and go slowly.